Hey everybody, this is EMAC here doing an audition piece for Pro Wrestling Talk Radio, the show where fans rate and debate the hottest topics in the world of wrestling. Ha! Like how I did that, J-Dub. This audition piece is for a co-host spot on PWTR, and in order to qualify for it, I have a series of questions that I need to answer. These questions were all listed on PWFempire.com, which is the home page for Pro Wrestling Talk Radio and its hosts, J-Dub, David, and Charlie. So with that, I'm just going to jump right into it and answer question number 1. The first question is, who are you and what can you offer to PWTR? Well, I'm EMAC0307 on Twitter and EMAC2K7 on YouTube, and my real name is Emmanuel. I'm from Michigan, so go Lions, of course. I'm an avid football fan. I'm an avid wrestling fan. I'm an avid fan of anything that has to do with anything sports. As far as what I can bring to PWTR, I come from a journalism background, so I have a real knack for asking tough questions and coming up with thought-provoking ideas and different perspectives that I can add to what's already been established with David, Charlie, and J-Dub. And with that, I'll go on to question number 2. What are your thoughts on John Cena and his place in the wrestling industry today? Now, this is where we really get started. In order to answer this question, you have to understand that there are 2 different John Cenas that we're talking about here. There's John Cena the man and John Cena the character. John Cena the man I have the utmost respect for. He's probably the hardest working individual in the business as far as his workouts, as far as his dedication to the industry. He's easily one of the strongest individuals that WWE has ever seen. And you can't get to that level of strength and endurance without putting in the work necessary to get there. Now, when you couple those physical gifts that he has along with his contributions to charity through the Make-A-Wish Foundation, he's easily one of the most important assets that the WWE has on its roster today. But when we talk about John Cena, the character, that's when the problems start. When Cena first hit the scene in 2002, he was fresh, he was unique, he was gifted. He was everything that you wanted in a WWE superstar, and the WWE saw that. So they pushed him, and he eventually became WWE champion and world champion and WWE champion and world champion. So the problem is not inherently in John Cena. It's in the way that he's been used. In 2007, I got the opportunity to go to WrestleMania 23 when it came to Detroit, Michigan. And I really don't remember much about that WrestleMania because I was just caught up in the lore of being there. But after that, my interest in wrestling kind of waned up until the period around 2011. And in between that time, I would hear about wrestling and what was going on. And every time I heard about it, John Cena was the damn champion still. And I'm like, what the hell? I mean, this isn't 1982 when Hulk Hogan needs to run through everybody on the roster in order to grow the industry. WWE as a company is internationally recognized. You don't need one guy to put the company on the map anymore. So when you have all this talent in the roster and you still have one guy that's dominating, the character tends to grow stale, and that's what's happened to John Cena. Now you could bring up Triple H as someone that's dominated through the entire 2000s, but Triple H in that span changed from time to time dramatically. Whether he was the cerebral assassin that was hitting people with hammers and only looking out for himself and his needs, or he was the leader of Evolution, or he was the one part member of DX, he always changed his character. It wasn't necessarily a matter of turning face or turning heel. It was just minor changes, and it was the entertainment value that John Cena's character does not have. John Cena's character is built around one thing, and that is overcoming obstacles. And you can only overcome obstacles for so long before you yourself become the obstacle that other people need to overcome. So it's not necessarily that people are sick of seeing Cena on TV. It's that they're sick of seeing this John Cena on TV. I mean, all of the greats, whether it be Stone Cold, The Rock, Undertaker, Triple H, Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, all of them, they have all changed their characters from time to time so that they don't grow stale. John Cena's character and the WWE creative team that's handling it simply hasn't done that over the years. But that's never going to change because John Cena's character is marketed towards children. And if you lose the C Nation, you lose a huge chunk of WWE's fan base. So it's just something that the rest of us is just going to have to live with. Now, that being said, there are things that WWE can do to make John Cena and his character a little more bearable to an older audience. Number one, he can get rid of the cookie cutter, I'm going to win, come buy this pay-per-view promos, and just talk from his heart. I mean, it's really, really transparent when WWE puts a promo and puts someone out on the mic to cut a promo that's just intended to get you excited to try to buy the pay-per-view, rather than actual investment of that time in building the storyline and getting us excited organically. And number two, John Cena needs a rival, point blank. When Stone Cold was making his run through WWE, there was always The Rock there. Later on, there was Triple H there. Undertaker was there. When Triple H had his runs, he had to compete with Cena. He had to compete with Batista, Randy Orton. Who does John Cena have? I mean, what wrestler on the active roster is going to legitimately make you feel like John Cena might lose this match, without having his arm broken or slammed onto the steel steps and whatnot? For me, anyway, only one name really comes to mind, and that's CM Punk. But WWE hasn't really played on that angle since the Money in the Bank and SummerSlam back-to-back pay-per-views. They had one match last year, I think, in SummerSlam, but does it really matter? I mean, that match last year came in the middle of John Cena's, I just lost to The Rock, so I'm going to go on a 1-year losing streak run. So really, it had little to do with Cena and more to do with Punk. And that wasn't beneficial for that feud at the time. And now that that's out the way, I'm going to go on to question number 3. Who would you vote for the best in the world and why? Well, no offense to Daniel Bryan, J-Dub, but I'm going to put my vote in for CM Punk. On the mic, the man is a genius. There is literally, in my opinion, no one in WWE history that could compete with CM Punk on a microphone during a promo shoot. And as good as he is on the mic, he's just as good, if not better, a technical wrestler in the ring. And when you combine those two elements, you get these deep-rooted and entertaining feuds with people like John Cena, with Brock Lesnar, with whatever he can make out of the feud with Paul Heyman, because Ryback ruined the whole thing. Anyway, he's just one of the best talents that the WWE has on its roster today. I mean, think about some of the feuds that he's had over the past 2 or 3 years. The feud with John Cena at Money in the Bank in 2011 was the thing that got me back into wrestling after I lost interest in 2007. And since then, there's not been a single match that has had the build-up and that has delivered on the product as well as that feud. The only other match that I can think of that had that great build-up and that polished product in the ring is the CM Punk and Brock Lesnar match at SummerSlam this past year. Now, when you have one guy that has the two most compelling and great feuds in the business in the past 2 or 3 years, how can he not be the best in the world? No disrespect to Daniel Bryan, his in-ring talent is phenomenal, but he just doesn't have the microphone skills or the character development to garner that kind of sustained interest and anticipation for his matches. Just screaming yes, yes, yes all the time and yelling on the microphone about how you're going to win the WWE Championship doesn't cut it enough, at least not enough for me. So, on to question number 4. What are your thoughts on TNA? My initial thought, who the hell cares? TNA as a company is going nowhere. And when I first heard the reports about their talent not being paid on time and them having trouble filling up the stadiums and stuff that they were going to, I thought that they would be out of business by this time. Now, TNA used to be a great thing. It had compelling feuds like Bobby Roode versus James Storm, and it had entertaining in-ring action. I mean, honestly, when I used to watch TNA, I used to enjoy their matches a lot more than I enjoyed the matches in WWE. And it had actual women's wrestling where the women wrestled instead of trying to do backflips and botched elbows and drop kicks everywhere. But at the same time, they've also done a lot of stupid shit. All I need to say really is Claire Lynch. So TNA right now as a company is completely irrelevant. In fact, the only way they would be relevant is if WWE bought them out, which would be a great thing for the wrestling industry. It'll give WWE a fresh injection of great talent and great feuds, new people, new combinations of wrestlers. I mean, just think about this for a second. CM Punk versus Austin Aries, AJ Styles versus John Cena, Bobby Roode versus anyone because he's a great talent, and actual women's wrestling. I mean, if WWE bought TNA and utilized the talent in the way that it should be utilized, it'd be a huge shot in the arm for the wrestling industry, and especially for the WWE as a company, provided the creative team doesn't screw it all up. Anyway, let's move on to question number 5. What is your stance on the pro wrestler versus sports entertainers argument? Honestly, I don't really care what they call themselves. I don't care what the WWE calls them. As long as they deliver on a compelling product in the ring and on the microphones, I'm happy. I mean, if it were up to me, of course I'd call them pro wrestlers, but, whatever. I don't care. Question number 6. Who is your favorite wrestler of all time and why? Well, Stone Cold Steve Austin was always my favorite wrestler growing up, and I don't really think I need to explain why. His feud with McMahon was epic. The Stone Cold Stunner is one of the most exciting finishers of all time, and he's probably the primary reason that we have a WWE instead of a WCW today. But now that I'm a little bit older and know a little bit more about the backstage talent that they had, I think Mick Foley has had the most interesting career of anyone ever. When you look at everything that it took for him to become a professional wrestler and all of the trials and tribulations that he went through in WCW that led him to ECW and eventually to the WWE, and all the bumps that, Hell in a Cell, come on now. Him getting thrown off the cage was easily the most exciting moment in WWE history. And when you start to examine the man behind the character, or characters in this case, you have to have nothing but the highest respect for him. But enough about that. Let's go on to the last question. What are your thoughts on WWE being PG? This is a complicated one to answer because WWE's problems aren't rooted specifically in the fact that it's PG instead of TV-14. It's rooted more so in the creative design and the decision-making that goes along with what they're doing in the ring. I was watching one of the WWE DVDs recently, which is a problem in itself, and we'll get to that later. But on the DVD, I remember Vince McMahon saying something about it's more entertaining to the audience when you can force them to think rather than forcing them to just react, which in general is true. But back in the Attitude Era, and I hate to harken back to this, but their WWE's product design was based on shocking people. And it wasn't just in the ring, it was with their storylines as well. I mean, think about when Triple H came out and declared to the world that he and Stephanie McMahon were already married, or when Austin drove the cement truck and poured cement all over McMahon's Corvette. That was all about the shock value, and that garnered the ratings. I'm not saying that WWE needs to be all shock value again, but they've eliminated the shock value almost completely. I mean, if you've ever seen the OMG Top 50 Moments in WWE History DVD, almost 80% of them came from the Attitude Era, and it was within like a 2-year period with the Austin Corvette, with the Austin with the beer truck, with Mick Foley falling off of the cage. The only thing that was relatively recent was when the Nexus took over and dominated John Cena and destroyed the Raw set and mumbo jumbo wumbo. And even that was only number like 49 on the list or something like that. I'm not saying that WWE needs to be all shock value because I would hate that. But when you take it out completely, you kind of alienate the fan base that you had that grew up around the Attitude Era. WWE has shown that it has the ability to put on great matches in the PG era. I mean, if you think about Triple H versus Randy Orton, or CM Punk versus John Cena, Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, Taker versus Triple H, CM Punk versus Brock Lesnar, even Daniel Bryan versus John Cena most recently. But they don't have the wars that they used to have. The deeply personal feuds like Randy Orton versus Triple H versus Shawn Michaels, Austin versus McMahon, that would spill over into these highly physical and intense matches. Now, I'm not out here saying that if you have blood, oh my God, it's an instant 5-star classic. This is a great match. No, I'm not saying that. But if you don't make me feel like these characters have some real animosity for each other, then it's harder for me to get emotionally invested in the product that you're putting out there. Now, part of the reason they haven't been able to do that is because they just don't have the talent to be able to pull it off. I mean, if you were to create a war with today's roster, who are you going to put in it? Alberto Del Rio, Dolph Ziggler? It just doesn't work. And if that weren't bad enough, WWE continually puts out these DVDs to remind us of the good old days, whether it be Triple H's DVD, Mick Foley's, the top 50 moments of WWE history, the Attitude Era, NWO Revolution. All of this stuff just reminds us of what WWE used to be and what we hope that it'll be in the future. But since a certain Canadian crippler took the actions that he did, there's no way that WWE is going to be able to go back to that place. It's just too dangerous for the in-ring talent, and it'll look bad for public relations. So for as interesting and as entertaining as these DVDs are, they force us to take a closer look at today's WWE and what they're doing, and they're not living up to past expectations. I mean, like I said, WWE does not need to be all shock and no think. But when you take the shock value completely out, that is one of their primary problems today. So with that, I'll conclude this audition piece, and hopefully you guys will be hearing from me on PWTR soon. Remember, PWTR is located at pwfempire.com, and this is Emax saying peace out. I can't say peace out, that's J-Dub's line. I'll just say bye. See you guys.